before, we thank you for your presence this evening. If you're joining us for the first time, my name is Marcus Rather. My partner here is Emmett Corboy. We're both financial advisors located in Richmond, but we're going to be global pretty soon in the future. So I'm very excited to continue the great work that we do. We're both dedicated and driven to providing the best in-class client experience as we can. And today we're covering a very important topic amongst all the things in the news with, SVB. We're dealing with a volatile market. And if you joined us a few times this month, you may have heard us talk about the Secure Act 2.0. So there are a lot of things moving, a lot of things changing. What has not changed so much from the Secure Act were things pertaining to Social Security. So we did want to take a quick moment to just pause, call timeout, turn the TV off, and make sure that you're hearing from a trusted resource like Emmett and I. So without further ado, I'm going to kick things off to Emmett so he can introduce the topic for this evening.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Marcus. And, thank you everybody for tuning in here today. Social Security is always one of the most important topics that we talk about as financial advisors. And I know it's also, unfortunately, one of the most overlooked pieces to a retirement portfolio. We have a tendency to look a lot at our 401k or IRAs or investments or real estate or, maybe a future career that we might go into post-retirement. But oftentimes we don't always think about the true value of Social Security. And that's something that, Marcus and I always want to, shine some light on and shed some, additional knowledge in that department. So, I think that hopefully we'll do that this evening. And, any questions that you have, if you don't feel comfortable throwing it into that Q&A box, write it down, come back to Marcus, come back to me, and we'll definitely answer that one-on-one with you as well. So when we think about what, that value is, Social Security offers income that you cannot outlive. And there's a lot to be said for that. As soon as you start collecting Social Security, that's going to come in for the rest of your life. Now, that being said, one thing we don't know is how long we're going to live. So it's important to look at all of the factors at play, and we're going to talk a lot about those factors of life expectancy as well as family history, longevity, all kinds of things like that that can kind of factor into when it would be wise for you to start your benefit. But if we just think about, okay, the income that, a person cannot outlive, if your monthly benefit is $2,000 today and you do live another 10 years after starting Social Security, that's $276,000 that you've collected in lifetime benefits, right? Over 20 years, it's actually $602,000. And over 30 years or more, that's over $1 million in lifetime benefits. So if you were sitting here at, say, 60, 65 years old, and I said, hey, guess what? You're a millionaire. And you look maybe at your IRA, maybe you're fortunate enough to where, yes, you are over that $1 million in savings and investments. And in today's day and age, many folks are, which is great. But maybe you don't feel that. You don't see it on your statement. Social Security can provide $1 million in benefits to you over the course of your retirement years, right? And now this, projection here does assume the cost of living adjustments, which, historically have averaged about 2% over the last 20 years. Those numbers can be higher. They can be lower. We've never seen a time when the benefit has actually reduced from one year to the next, although there have been times when Medicare increases have made it feel like it's reduced. But over, from 2022 to 23, benefit amount actually went up by 8.7%. So those numbers do get larger as time goes on as well. And that's what we, kind of look at here. If we look at a $2,000 monthly benefit today, when we factor in just that 2% annual cost of living adjustment, 10 years from now, that benefit would be $2,438, right? 20 years from now, $2,972. And 30 years from now, you're over, $3,600 per month, right? And this is, as you're collecting, year over year. And so one thing that's important to, factor in, and we'll talk more about this, is, when do I start? Because the benefit that you start with is going to be impacted by, or is going to then impact your cost of living adjustments as well. So how do I calculate my benefit, and what does this kind of depend on? Two things that, really impact your benefit. One is how much you earned over your working career. And two is the age at which you apply for benefits. So first, how much you earn over your working career. If you're a W-2 employee, when you look at your paycheck, you see, that FICA tax on there, right? They tax you based on your earnings, and that actually gets paid into Social Security. So the more that you pay in over your working career, the more that you then collect at the back end in retirement. The other thing to keep in mind is, we talk with, oftentimes, whether it's a business owner or that sort of thing, somebody who can kind of control their income a little bit more. Sometimes, they try and reduce that FICA tax as much as possible, but that actually ends up hurting how much they'll collect, in Social Security as well. So it's important to look at things on both sides of the coin there. The age that you apply for benefits. Now, if you've looked at a Social Security statement recently, you'll see age 62, 63, 64, all the way till age 70. And there are different numbers there. Those numbers represent how much you would get at that age if you turn on Social Security at that age, right? So the earlier that you claim, the lower that your benefit amount is going to be. Right? And another thing that I'll kind of add to this, when we look at, qualifying for Social Security, what you have to get to is 40 quarters or 10 working years. So as long as you've paid into Social Security for 10 years, then you're eligible to then collect a benefit in retirement. How your benefit is calculated. This gets a little bit technical. If you really want to get into all the nuts and bolts on this, I'm happy to spend some time here. But the key thing is that at age 62, each year's earnings are tallied up and then indexed for inflation. And your highest 35 years of earnings are averaged out. There are a few different, they call them bend points that come in to then determine your primary insurance amount. This is one phrase that would be good to write down. PIA, or primary insurance amount. This is the amount that you receive at your full retirement age. That's the next key term that I'll have you write down is FRA. Your PIA is what you get at your FRA. And your FRA, full retirement age, is generally, it's going to be between 66 and 67. If you haven't started to collect yet, most likely it's age 67, right? And then again, your benefit is increased each year by the cost of living adjustments. So if we look at somebody who was born in 1961, they turned 62 this year, and say hypothetically, they had maximum Social Security earnings every year since age 22. I'm just going to kind of fast forward to the end of this calculation here and, point down here to the total, where what you can see there is that their benefit amount, now not at age 62, but at their full retirement age of 67, would be $3,653 per month. Now they can certainly collect early, but they would get a reduced amount at that point. right. And if we dig a little bit deeper into that full retirement age, take a look on this chart, see what your year of birth is, and go to the right, and that's what your full retirement age. So if you were born in 1957, your full retirement age is 66 and 6 months. See, basically it started off where it used to be 65 for everybody, but for those born after 1943, they changed it to 66 for everybody. And then they didn't want to just change it with a hard cutoff. So what they did was they said, okay, after age 54, we'll increase it by 2 months for each year until those born after 1960. So many folks, as we just kind of looked at that last illustration, folks who are now entering into their 60s are, would have a full retirement age of 67. That probably pertains to many of you on the call here today. Now, we talked about applying early for benefits because, like I said, many are probably in that 67 category. I'm going to focus on this side of the chart here. If your full retirement age is 67 and you start your benefit at age 62, now the good thing is that you've got that money coming in, right? The income starts. And once it starts, you can't outlive it. The not so good thing is that if you start at age 62, you take a reduction down to 70% of what your PIA is, or what your primary insurance amount is. So when you think about that, it's basically like saying, hey, pay me 5 years early, but pay me 30% less for my lifetime. Now, like I said, it's good to start that income early, but if you live a long time, you're going to end up behind because you're taking that pay cut for life, and you don't ever end up catching up. The other thing is that you can delay your claiming for up until age 70 as well. And each year that you delay, you actually get a 8% annual delayed credit. So, again, looking at, full retirement age of 67, if you delay till age 68, your benefit amount goes to 108% of what it would have been at age 67. Delaying till 69 goes to 116, and to 70 goes up to 124%. So for folks who maybe, are working longer, or maybe just looking to maximize their retirement income and maximize that guaranteed stream of income, delaying can be a very wise option, right? You can see a number of different, kind of scenarios can come about with this, especially when we consider couples and, divorced spouse, which we'll get into some of these different things. But, one thing that Marcus and I like to do for our clients is put together a Social Security calculator where we look at these different factors and discuss, options that you have and help to determine what, the best scenario is to choose as well. All right, next thing to write down. If you have not yet, go to socialsecurity.gov/myaccount. If that name's too long for you, just put in ssa.gov and create an account there. All right, we hear so much in the news today or in the world today about, folks being hacked or cybersecurity, and we've provided some insight on that in past webinars as well. One thing that you can do to help protect your identity, set up your Social Security login. If you do it, nobody else can. And you'll also see what I mean by that, because when you do it, you'll see how difficult it is for anybody to get back in there as well. It's almost like, needing a key to Fort Knox. So make sure you create a secure password, but go to socialsecurity.gov and create your login. And then what you also need to do is pull a recent statement. And that recent statement is going to show the amount that you would collect at the different ages. It's also going to show your earnings history. And it's very, very important that you review your earnings history. One thing that I mentioned before and how your benefit is calculated, it's actually the 35 highest years of income. So I'll give a kind of personal example. When my dad was considering claiming Social Security, we looked at his statement, we looked at his earnings history. He was born in 1952, and his first year that he paid into Social Security was, I believe, 1965, right? So, at the time that we were looking at claiming, obviously the amount that he made in 1965 at the gas station that he would ride his bike to, that didn't add into those 35 highest years anymore. But what did happen is the years toward the end, those higher income earning years start to replace those years toward the beginning, right? And so it's an added benefit. It's another benefit to working a little bit longer, is that your income now, I'm sure, is much higher than it was 35 years ago in most cases. So even working 1 year longer might take, say, $100,000 and replace maybe $35,000 from 35 years ago. So that's going to increase your benefit as well. Another thing that's important to review your earnings history is sometimes that's not accurate. There have been situations where folks have looked at it and said, what do you mean I had no income in 2010? I know I worked that year. Why is this showing no income? Well, if that's the case, then you need to go get that corrected at Social Security ASAP. And, again, we can help you with that a little bit as well. Okay, I do know we have one question in here. Now might be a good time to take a time out, kind of call it halftime here a little bit.
Call halftime. Drink your favorite beverage, your favorite snack. We're going to take a small break. I'm going to take some water, even though I didn't talk at all. But yeah, we're absolutely going to address this question. It's a great question. It actually made me laugh a little bit. So thank you to our favorite participant in all of our seminars for asking this outstanding question. The question was, is 2% cost of living adjustments reasonable? With inflation and so many other costs going up, I wonder if it should be more. I think that's an awesome question, because I can't tell you any person that's receiving Social Security now saying that they would love more in their check as well. So great question. My response to that would be the 2% that you saw illustrated is just an average. And if you understand how averages work, right, it's never a flat linear number. Some years you may have some declared, other years you may not. As Emmett just mentioned, coming into this year, the declared cost of living adjustment was 8.1, 8.7%.
8.7%. Yeah.
8.7. So clearly that's, not too, but that attributes to the average that it, that will be, moving forward. So there may be years where you have a declared cost of living adjustment. There may not. And what you may also want to consider, which we'll get into, are some other expenses that may reduce your Social Security benefit. So we're going to get into that in a quick second. Please, if now is a good time to filter any other questions that you have up to this point. I do just want to reemphasize, please take note of that FRA. I hear plenty of people asking what the retirement age is. Some people say their retirement age is 69, some say 70, and I have this puzzled look every time. So please remember what your full retirement age is. No one's full retirement age is 69. No one's full retirement age is 62. That's the earliest, but your full is based in the year in which you were born, meaning 66 in a few months, or 67 likely at this time.
And so also, going back just to that inflation question, so it's not just a set guaranteed 2% each and every year, but it is tied to the CPIW, the Consumer Price Index, one of the metrics that they use there. And so as inflation is higher, the following year, the benefit will be a little bit higher. But we had a year in 2022 where inflation ran rampant, and there's no mid-year adjustments. It's always, come January of the following year. So, folks had to kind of, tighten their belts a little bit maybe last year, but now have had that increase heading into this year.
In addition to the age, also want to just remind people that after 62, in any year from that point, you can elect to earn your benefit. And I think naturally people think of certain ages as benchmark. 62 is the earliest, 65 is Medicare, your full retirement age, and 70. Please be aware that any year after 62 or after your full age, you can elect to draw it. So you don't have to wait until 70. You can turn it on at 68, 69, anywhere in that year at that time. It doesn't have to be on your birthday or anything along those lines. Whenever you're eligible, you are eligible to draw that benefit from that point forward. So please be aware of that process. And please also heed Emmett's advice on setting up your My Social Security. I am not a person that values going online. I like customer service. But by far, I can say Social Security is the worst customer service I've experienced in this industry. Still waiting on a call back from 2 years ago. Long wait times and things along those lines. The online process is much simpler than an automated Social Security. So if you have not done so, please be sure to set up your My Social Security. It is very secure. They have 2-pin authentication and even added security steps after that. So please be sure to do that. We do have another question. Emmett, do we have time during the timeout here, or should we keep flowing?
I think this one, so I've heard of people taking benefits early, but continuing to work. Thought you only could collect after you quit working. So I think we'll actually get into this in the second half of the content. So let's hold that one maybe until the end.
And I see an individual with your hand raised. If you don't mind just jotting down your question or adding your question in the Q&A, or we'll absolutely follow up with you. So for this part, factors to consider, because we've heard them all. So we absolutely want you to understand that we understand. We understand that we all don't know how long you're going to live. You may very well not be able to see your benefit. You may not live till tomorrow. And so often, as you're getting close to retirement, there are a lot of factors that may attribute to your decision around when to draw Social Security. And our job is to help sift through a lot of those emotions and the fears and add logic to that to make sure that we're making the best decision for you and your future. So a few factors to consider when deciding when to apply. Naturally, yes, your health status. For some people, longevity may be in the future just based off family history, your current health. You may very well be planning for a long retirement. But for others, if you don't have longevity in the family, or if you have some type of chronic or critical illness that may cut your retirement short, that is ample reason as to why it may take Social Security sooner than later. So you factor in health status, your life expectancy, naturally your need for income, what your income goal is for retirement today and later in retirement, whether or not you plan to work, right? If you're planning to work full-time, part-time, what level of work, and essentially your survivor needs, who else is impacted by your decision of drawing Social Security, coordinated with the spouse, dependent, whatever the case may be. These are the 5 factors that you do want to keep in mind. With that being said, when to apply, yes, we do address this question. If you apply early, your benefits do stay lower for life. So not only are you taking the reduction, but if you are deciding to work, whether part-time or full-time, and you're taking a reduced benefit, there is a earnings limitation. So that earnings limitation, I don't perfectly know the numbers this year by heart. That number gradually changes, but there is a certain amount of income you can earn before that impacts your Social Security benefit. And what I do know is every $2 past that limit, they withhold $1 of your benefit. So you do absolutely want to factor in what role or what level of work you anticipate while working in retirement. Cost of living adjustments magnify the impact of early. So it's not just when you see that 60 or your full retirement age versus 62. It's not just that dollar difference. You have to add in the cost of living adjustments that are added to your benefit. So the longer that you live, the more beneficial it is to delay your retirement. Keep in mind, the benefit that you see on your statement is not a after-tax or net benefit amount. Taxes may be due on your Social Security based on your total income and sources of income for retirement. And Medicare premiums are generally deducted from your Social Security income. So very easily can a $2,000 PIA on your statement turn into $1,500 or $1,400 due to taxes, Medicare premiums, or other things. So please be aware of the things that will be impacting or reducing your actual benefit for Social Security. Don't let the earnings test discourage you from working, but keep that in mind. And delaying your benefits may give surviving spouses more income, the way that surviving spouses can inherit the larger of the two upon the passing of the primary breadwinner. So strategy number one, how can you increase
that, real quick, Marcus, that earnings test for 2023, which is if you draw before your full retirement age and you're still working, if you make less than $21,240 in the year, then you're fine. All right. Your benefit is taxed, but there's no other impact to your benefit. But if you draw early and you earn over $21,240, then what happens is Social Security will pull back $1 in benefits for every $2 that you earn over that. So if you earn $31,240, you're $10,000 over, they're going to take $5,000 back from you. That's what you really want to consider if you're still working and drawing your benefit before your full retirement age. After your full retirement age, you can work, you can make as much as you want, and you have to pay taxes, but there's no other earnings test after you reach that age 66 or 67.
So strategy number one, how to increase your benefit naturally, improving your earnings record. As Emmett gracefully said, they take an average of your 35 highest, it's not consecutive, but 35 highest years of earnings. So when you log on to Social Security, your My Social Security, there is a way for you to look at your earnings history. And I can't stress how important that is, because similar to Emmett, I also had an experience of connecting with a client. We found a discrepancy. It was one digit off, but it was a pretty significant digit when you're talking about commas. So pure years of working history, income was gradually increasing, but there was 1 year, some digit, $50,000-$80,000 income turned into 8. And the question was, did you take a year off? Did you work part-time? And she said, no, I've been working all my life. So easily, that was one moment that we said, hey, absolutely need to make sure year over year. My suggestion is after you file your taxes, log on to My Social Security, make sure that they recorded your earnings correct for that tax year. Very simple thing to do. So examine your earnings record, make sure it's accurate, see if there are any missing years, and understand that as you're working longer, you're replacing those years of lower income, increases your average. Just like doing extra homework assignments and passing tests. I know all too well about that.
Replacing zeros.
Yep. Yeah, homework. Strategy number two, apply for Social Security at the optimal time. So remember those 5 things to consider: your income needs, your longevity, your current health, your spouse, your life expectancy, so on and so forth. Please do not take this lightly. Don't base your decision based on the decision of someone else in your department, in your family. Take a moment to think what's best for you, your household, and your plan. Don't allow emotion to lead to a very drastic and serious decision. So keep those things in mind, those 5 things in mind of when to apply for your Social Security benefit. So keep working, understand the annual earnings test. This is where Emmett had mentioned, so jumped ahead a little bit, but for 2023, as you can see on the screen, $21,240 is the earning limitation for this year. Every $2 over reduces a dollar in benefit. Emmett did that wonderful example, quick math. I'm not going to try to regurgitate that because he did it so well. But please understand that the benefit will be adjusted at your full retirement age. So it doesn't mean that it's a lost benefit. If they withhold that money, it's not lost forever. You don't ever get that back. It is gradually added back in once you reach your full retirement age. But if you're limited on the benefit, if you're having the benefit withheld, it just makes you question, was it the best time for you to draw your benefit and work and earn over that amount? So don't let the annual test discourage you from working, but be familiar with how much you can work before it impacts the benefit in those years. To avoid the earnings test, wait until full retirement age or later to apply for your benefit. So strategy number 3, you can't forget about the significant other. You absolutely want to coordinate spousal benefits. With Social Security, it is in favor of survivors. So not only they did do away with a lot of the claiming strategies that was once available before, claim now, claim more later, file and suspend to this point is typically when you draw your benefit is the best way to maximize it. But when you're looking at, again, longevity, the statistics that women will outlive men in many cases, and the difference between earnings of genders as well, a primary breadwinner drawing it at the earliest may significantly impact the surviving spouse later on in retirement. So we have tools, as Emmett mentioned before, we have calculators that will show dual income households coordinating benefits together over the longevity of the plan, whether one takes early and one takes later, if they both take at the same time or they both delay or whatever variation. We want to be sure that you understand the impact of that decision. So you absolutely want to coordinate spousal benefits and make sure you utilize us for the right tools, for the right perspective and education. Strategy number 4, my favorite topic, which, I'm not a CPA, but I just love talking about taxes for some reason. You absolutely want to minimize the taxation of those benefits. Ways that you can do that are about identifying asset location, right? Identifying where your streams of income will come from. Most assets prior to, the implementation of Roth were all pre-tax and traditional. In today's time, more Roth assets are being accumulated, or tax-free income from municipal bonds and other sources of income as well. So you want to be familiar with your sources of income and not only be familiar with the source, but when is the right time to spend those monies down. Something that was covered previously from the Secure Act 2.0 is that they've extended the age for required minimum distribution. That additional year does allow you more time to save that money and defer that from taxes. But maybe there's a reason to spend that money down first, where you're not getting guaranteed money from a IRA or from a qualified account, and you get guaranteed money from Social Security. Maybe there's a reason to spend down the non-guaranteed first and maximize the guaranteed money from Social Security. So what you can do is reduce other income with tax advantage investments, but not municipal bonds. Anticipate IRA, RMDs, and required minimum distributions based on the age. So if you're someone that's already taking RMDs, it's likely not going to benefit you. But if you are someone that has an advantage of taking RMDs at 73, or if you were born after 1960 and your age begins at 75, you may want to factor in what that additional time can allot you for Social Security. While we're still in years of low taxes, you may want to factor in converting traditional IRA assets to Roth, taking advantage of the low tax rate that we're in environment until whatever happens after the sunset in 2025. And naturally, delaying Social Security can also play a benefit.
I think you covered this info already, right? Sorry, Marcus.
Yep, RMDs and all that good stuff. Strategy number 5, coordinate Social Security with your overall retirement income strategy. As I mentioned before, understand your sources of income. If you're someone that has a pension, or if you're someone that's using other strategies or products to provide guaranteed income, again, asset location, be sure to overall have a holistic view of your retirement income strategy. Not only do we want to make sure you have the income that you need for retirement, but as we experienced last year, things got more expensive. And generally in retirement, you don't have those same pay raises that you were due and that you did receive while you work, right? So generally, we want to be sure that we're able to provide an income strategy that gives you a step up in your pay in retirement to offset any rising costs of goods and services like inflation that we've seen over the past year. So make sure you coordinate that with your overall strategy and don't look at it as a one standalone item. So things to consider in the context, as I said before, pensions, IRAs, 401ks, when RMDs are due, whether from inherited accounts or naturally at the age of 73. If you're working and supplementing that income, allowing more time for your money to grow. Again, look at it as a holistic view, not just a one alone standalone view.
And yeah, the key thing there is that, don't feel like you have to do that on your own either. This is something that, Marcus and I really specialize in is looking at the overall picture for your retirement income strategy and seeing how it all fits together, right? So, what you need to determine is how much income you need, right? And, we've got budget worksheets to go through and things like that, but then we can then determine, the feasibility of retirement at different times, when to draw from different assets and, how to make it all work, right? As long as we have, great information on what your goals are, what your needs are, how much income you need, we can show you how to get there, right? And Social Security, as I mentioned, could be $1 million diamond in your retirement portfolio. We need to treat it like that, right? But we need to make sure that we, look at the other diamonds that you have as well and see how do they all, fit together.
So at this moment, truthfully, we're going to be bringing this to a close. We understand that you naturally still have questions, right? This presentation was general, very good details, but naturally there are some questions that we did not address, right? When should you apply for Social Security? What if you want to keep working? What if you've already applied, right? How much will your benefit be? And clearly, all of these questions are particular to you and not to a general conversation. So the encouragement, as we've said before, utilize us, utilize the resources and the knowledge that we have to provide the right recommendation and advice for what you should do next. I think you used a wonderful analogy. I don't have to go through this whole jigsaw story that I was going to say because, I've heard it so many times before. Diamonds are a much better analogy. But I believe we did want to briefly go over one of the myths that we hear behind Social Security, that it's going to be bankrupt, depleted, we're never going to get it. Emmett, did you have that information, or would you like for me to briefly go over that?
You can touch on it, Marcus.
Briefly want to touch on it just because, I just like being a particular person. So year over year, each year they do have these solvency reports. And these are required to be provided to the public. And general understanding, I want everyone to understand, is that Social Security is not going to be depleted in a specific sense, in a literal sense. What it is made up of is revenue as well as assets. The same way that you have your income from pension and savings, Social Security is a operation. Some of it is through revenue, through tax dollars. Others are trust fund reserves. And if you look on your statement, if you hear anything on the news about a specific time period as to when things will be depleted, they're more so speaking to the trust fund reserves, the extra money that's set aside to cover the additional obligations. So the most recent report that we have as of now is from 2022, based on numbers from 2021. And what it says is that the old age and survivors insurance, that trust fund money that's set aside, which pays retirement and survivor benefits, will be able to pay scheduled benefits on a timely basis until 2034, which is 1 year later than what was previously reported. At that time, fund reserves will become depleted, and continuing tax income will be sufficient to pay 77% of scheduled benefits. Now, clearly, there are hundreds and millions of recipients of Social Security for old age survivors and disability. So for it to be completely obsolete would put a significant amount of Americans out of a primary source of income. So it's not my belief that it's going to be depleted. However, there is something that needs to be done about this. And there are potential solutions that are being discussed to make sure that the solvency of this trust fund reserve and of Social Security will provide its obligated benefits for the recipient. So is it perfect? No. Are there things that need to be done? Absolutely. When will it? I don't have the crystal ball, the answer to that, because I'm not in that position. It's past my pay grade. But we want to make sure that you're not, you're sifting through the noise, right? Not believing fire when you hear the smoke alarm or anything along those lines. So that is the most recent report. Prayerfully, the next time we do this presentation, we will have more of an updated report with some more positive news, maybe optimistic. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one way that I like to kind of break that down is when you hear about like Social Security reserves or the trust fund or that type of thing, basically for years and years, you know, Social Security was established in the early 1900s. And for years and years, there was more tax money going in than what was coming out in benefits, right? So basically, if you equate that to yourself, it would be like you having more income than you're spending, so you save it. Right. And so that's where this Social Security Trust Fund was built up and built up and built up. Well, folks started living longer and longer. People started claiming earlier. People also started having fewer children, which meant that there were fewer people working and paying into Social Security. And so what's happened is that there are people claiming longer, and you know, it could be even in some situations where you have two generations claiming for one generation working and paying into Social Security. You know, and you think about what they call the silent generation, or those born around the Great Depression era, plus the baby boomer generation, plus like, you know, my generation, you know, very possible that, you know, you have people in their 90s and 100s who have been claiming Social Security for 30 plus years, plus their children are claiming, and there's only one generation actually, you know, working and paying in. So it's basically a numbers game. But the key thing is that there's still money that's going into Social Security. Every time somebody gets paid, money's going into Social Security. And this is one of the most talked about topics in Congress right now. You know, everybody is working to try and, you know, shore that system up, because as Mark has said, you know, this is a primary source of income for so many retirees, so many Americans as a whole. And so I don't believe that it's something that we will ever see evaporate. As I mentioned, you know, I think that this is a diamond in your retirement plan, and something that you should, you know, certainly, you know, grow to expect to have throughout your retirement years. That being said, we will hear about adjustments to the program. If we don't hear about adjustments, that's where we need to be worried, because at that point, to Marcus's point of the trust fund being depleted, in 2034, we would just be running on the income from taxpayers, right? So it's like every penny that's coming in is going out. Sounds like it would, you know, be fine, but at the end of the day, we would only have enough coming in to pay out about 75% of claims, right? Pay out about 75% of benefits. So that change would come about in the fact that those who are claiming would have, you know, a lesser check. So I know there are some, you know, some kind of bills that have been floated out there in Congress. One introduced by Bernie Sanders recently put through a new Social Security reform proposal. We'll see if that makes any traction. That was just about a month or so ago. He put out a new proposal. So hopefully, you know, we'll see whether it's something from Bernie Sanders or somebody else who's working on with a joint coalition of folks to, you know, potentially, shore up the solvency of the program as well. And I know we have another question here with investments. Is there a specified age you have to start taking money out? I thought IRAs had a requirement where you have to start taking money out. That is, very true. With IRAs or any traditional retirement plan, it's now age 73, you have what's called a required minimum distribution. So at some point in retirement, you will have to withdraw from your IRA or 401k. One thing that Marcus kind of went over with that is there are some things that you can do to potentially, plan ahead for that, whether it's maybe starting to draw down earlier or convert a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. That can mean that you don't have to pull as much out in retirement as well. So it's a very good question, and I'm glad that we got that as well. So that being said, reach out to us. Let us know what questions you have. And, this is something that is too important to leave for guesswork, or too important to say, well, I think I'll just start at this age because that's what my friends did. Let us help. Let us look at this, with you in the context of your own individual circumstance. And, nobody has one perfect answer. We're not going to sit here and say, well, everybody should claim at age X, because for everybody, it's different. Even for a husband and a wife, oftentimes that answer is different. So it's important to sit down and truly get your specified strategy and know that that strategy can also adjust as time goes on as well. But thank you all for joining in this evening. And we hope that everybody got some good information. And we look forward to talking with you all again soon.
Thanks for joining, everyone. Everyone, have a good evening.
All righty. We'll see you guys.